Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Soul Canvas podcast. This is the place to be possible. I'm your host, Jennifer Madsen, and I started this podcast because of my insane, intense, beautiful desire to get in touch with people around the world and find out what lives they're living by what they've said yes to. Now, the podcast is brand new. So, we've explored a little bit of saying yes to new beginnings and yes to joy. And we'll be talking about adventure and art and travel and all sorts of things. And today, my guest, Elizabeth Kipp, is with me today. We're going to be talking about saying yes to healing. I want to tell you a little bit about Elizabeth first, and then I will officially drag her into the conversation. Elizabeth is a stress management and historical trauma specialist. She uses trauma-trained and yoga-informed addiction recovery coaching, ancestral clearing, compassionate inquiry, and yoga to help people with their healing. So I will let you, Elizabeth, come on with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your story. When I put the call out for podcast guests, it's always so interesting to me to see how people answer the question of what they have said yes to in their lives, what was hard about that, what came as a result. And you and I think, have some things in common with our recovery. We're both in long-term recovery. And I know and I did mention this early in the podcast when I first launched, that saying yes to my recovery, it's almost 39 years now, opened the door to everything, to every other yes that came from there, because of all of the people that saw so much more for me than I could see for myself. And that's why it's a subject that's so near and dear to my heart, the saying yes thing. When I saw your application to the podcast and you talked about saying yes to your healing, yes to, uh, I don't even know if I'm using the right words. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. The breakthroughs that needed to happen for you, by you, sometimes probably all by yourself, and sometimes with help, I imagine, to affect your own healing were just fascinating to me. So, why don't we go ahead and dive in with, first of all, what was the chronic pain or the chronic condition that was present in your life?
Yeah, I really had kind of classic chronic pain, meaning spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. It presented like physical, but I didn't know that it had all these other aspects until I really got in front of a doctor that understood the nature of chronic pain.
Mm,
We'll just, if it's okay, just define the landscape of chronic pain for everyone so they kind
sure.
of understand what we're dealing with. Um, Chronic pain is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more.
Well, that's
Any,
interesting.
yeah, it's any pain, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It all sends the same signal. It hurts to the brain. So the brain can't tell the difference between the pain of not being able to pay a bill and its repercussions, a broken bone, or or grief.
Isn't that interesting to know too? Because I think I've been a coach for close to 30 years now. And, so my conversations with people around different areas of stress or pain in their lives, I've certainly done this on my own and seen it from others where we compartmentalize. This one is worse pain than that. Physical is worse than financial, or vice versa. Like we just pick one that feels the most. But I don't know that I have ever heard that characterization of what chronic pain actually is. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's really it's what's happening in the brain. How is the brain interpreting the signal it's getting? And it's the same signal, it hurts.
Hmm.
The other thing that's kind of I feel is important to understand, other than the fact that there's an awful lot of chronic pain in the world.
Yeah.
Um, like a fifth of North America is in chronic pain across all socioeconomic barriers. So
Mm,
it's that was that's a I don't even know what the COVID numbers are, but right, it's a lot. Um, so we normally have acute pain would be something like, oh, I bumped my knee or I broke a bone, maybe. Uh, and the stress response, we have a stress response which goes into the on position. We meet the threat uh, physiologically, psychologically, whatever, and when the stress response goes back into the on position, off position.
okay.
Um, a compound fracture might be kind of turn into chronic pain, but I'm not a regular bone break. I'm not sure that the pain of that would last for 3 months, 15 days
Sure.
after getting kicked
Sure.
out. I'm sure it would last that long, and I've broken a few bones, so it might last 6 weeks, but not 3 months, right?
Okay.
I'm just saying. But in chronic pain, uh, we perceive or are under threat, and the stress response goes into the on position, and it gets stuck. It
Now,
doesn't. It,
when you were having that time in your life where you were recognizing it at that level, did you know this? Or did you just know I'm in pain and it's off the charts?
I just knew I was hypervigilant. I just knew I was, I was.
So what was going on?
Oh, I had an accident when I was 14. I broke my fifth lumbar, and it broke front to back, so the front part kind of slipped forward and pulled the leg nerves with it. So it was, but it was. I kind of had a history of chronic gut pain, so I kind of denied or didn't really realize that signal was so important, and I walked away from the accident, and I really didn't need surgery for
Mm.
another 14 years, and then the when I had got pregnant and that extra weight in the front really
Mm,
caused an instability in the spine, and then it was like, "Oh, okay. Now we're worried that I'm gonna lose my ability to walk because that bone might slip right off, right, the
mm.
track." So, I had a total of 4 surgeries, and, in each one, the pain got worse, and in each one, they prescribed more and more, opiates and
As they
benzodiazepines.
do.
That was their answer. That was their answer. And their other so there was the diagnosis was chronic pain, and the prognosis was, "You can't heal from chronic pain. Here are your opiates and your benzodiazepines."
Mm.
By the way, don't heal chronic pain. They
No,
don't
no,
really
no.
heal chronic
I
pain.
get that.
So, in fact, they kinda can, which we that's a whole whole 'nother podcast, but we can they can actually exacerbate the problem. So I when I heard that pronouncement of "you can't heal from chronic pain," I broke down for 2 weeks. I cried, I didn't know what to d and I just was a mess.
Sure.
And, I had a 4-year-old baby and or 2-year-old, I think he was 2 at the time, a new marriage, and
Mm.
I was, hoping to have a career in environmental, studies, and anyway, um, just my whole blue world blew up,
Well,
and
sure, and having to wrestle with the idea that, like, is this my life?
I know, I know. What was interesting was the pause process, which was where the say yes to healing comes in. Was I wrestled with that for 2 weeks, and I really I felt like I was in a closet,
Mm,
a dark closet, and I couldn't find the doorknob or the door to get out. And but I knew there was a way out. It was really interesting, like, this was the energy that was going on inside of me,
yeah,
despair, and I know there's a way out. So there was an inner kind of, "I know there's a way out, I just haven't found it," kind of thing.
yeah.
And at the end of 2 weeks, I had an aha moment,
Mm. I love
which
those.
was yes,
I love
which
those.
was, "Oh, this doctor is not a fortune teller,
Mm,
and he's forgotten his basic science." Which is not facts. Science is not about facts, it's about probabilities.
uh-huh.
He didn't say that. He said you will. He didn't say you might. He didn't say
Mm.
the chances are. He never it was all this, which was
Big distinction.
I I thank him for saying that because I know it's a big distinction and it was an error, but I thank him for the error because he blew my world open with that.
Yeah.
Wow. And I was like, "Oh, he made an error." Well, I wasn't used to doctors in my world, in my brain, in my orientation making errors, not of that magnitude. And
No.
that was kind of shocking. The other thing was because of my science background, I knew that scientific paradigms shifted. So I knew they were operating. Their model was was operating within as a paradigm,
Yeah.
as, as a this is the way we see it. And I knew that those things change. Like everything's impermanent, other than change itself is, that's seems to be permanent, and
Right.
our awareness seems to be permanent, but consciousness seems to be permanent, but everything else seemed to change. So
So
I
was
was
it did you find that you were having not mostly, but you're clearly, very learned, and you said extensive scientific background. Were you finding that that was fueling a lot of the breakthrough of understanding and then next choices?
Well, yes and no, because I understood the constraints of science. It's a framework, and science can only operate in that framework, and that means it can only comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe.
So what did you do? What did you do with it? Like you get this knowledge because you have this background, but
Yeah,
what did you do with it?
yeah. I realized that my healing happened in the all that is, not just in the part that the scientific framework was referencing.
So you had that spiritual
So I knew I had to look outside of the scientific framework for my healing, that it was inside and outside, that
Mm,
I was gonna have to plumb the depths of both spaces. And so where the doctors kept saying there wasn't just one, it was a whole slew of them until I found one doctor in 2013 who finally actually understood the nature of chronic pain.
yeah.
These doctors said, "No, you can't heal." And I was like, "Yeah, I can." I just haven't figured out how yet. I haven't figured it out yet. Right.
So you had that spirit, you had spirituality in your life
Oh, yes. Yeah.
at that point, right? So it wasn't like
Mhm.
there was the burning bush. So when I got sober, the reason I'm asking that question, when I got sober, it was certainly a convergence of planetary whatever that came together. I didn't just wake up one day. You didn't just wake up one day from whatever the thing was, that the big thing that we moved forward from,
Mhm.
and say, gee, I should stop doing this, or gosh, they're wrong. Let me go do this other thing. And with my recovery in particular, um, I knew I knew nothing. I just knew I knew nothing. And I had no spirituality in my life, except that I had a sense, plus I was 24, right? So I also had no maturity. Um, but I had a sense that somebody knew. Somebody, something
Mhm.
knew better than what I was living with. Now, how old were you when this was going on?
I was maybe 30, 32
Yeah, so a
when
little bit
things happened.
older,
It's not
had a
much
couple
older.
kids, not
Yeah,
much older,
well,
but you had
wisdom of a child, motherhood, coming into motherhood, that your biochemistry, I changed into like this other person. I
yeah.
was like, oh, literally, delivery, new person.
So
So
what did you do then with the next steps of, I'm not gonna believe these doctors that say I can't heal from this. I believe otherwise. I found somebody who also believes otherwise. What'd you do next?
uh, I didn't find anybody that believed otherwise. I just, I understood that there was a bigger picture
Mhm.
than they were telling me and that I was referencing, and I needed to reference a larger sphere. And uh, so I kind of went about an inner transformation
Mm.
where I became more discerning about what I was hearing from the doctors, and I listened differently to my occupational therapists, and I listened differently to my physical therapists, um, and I and I'm just trying to think because that was a long time ago that I went through all that. Um, And I fortunately had an acupuncturist come into my life through the medical system,
Mm,
which was hugely helpful to me. And that was like, oh, now we have the traditional Chinese medicine model. Wow. And it was so powerful. So then I start looking at other models. So the short answer to your question is I started referencing different healing models than the one
mhm.
I was operating in.
Sure.
And and, uh, and I also, because I had this research science training, I also kind of knew that I didn't know everything, and we as humans don't know everything. So there's room out there for other things. And I had some training in quantum physics, and I knew about the present moment and all the different possibilities that live there. And, I had a lot of, as you say, a lot of points converged at once to allow kind of a big expansion.
Mhm. And so I know that you have a lot of modalities that you have obviously experienced and that you bring to others in their healing journey. Talk to me a little bit about the long-term recovery for you. What is that story for you?
Oh, again, that is a one day at a time, remind the nervous system that this is how we're doing life now. We're not doing life hypervigilant anymore.
Was it recovery from your chronic pain or recovery from addiction
Or
or
both.
Mm,
They act on the brain in not quite the same ways, but very similar. Chronic
sure,
pain is an addiction all by itself, and then you add opiates and benzodiazepines
sure.
on top of it. Now you've got, you know, um, and then a lifetime of a behavioral of suppressing emotions, because that was the way I was conditioned to stay safe in the world, was like, do not show anybody that you have any emotion at all. Right?
Yeah. No,
So
I
that,
feel that. I feel you.
yeah. So that was a lot to handle. Um, I kind of went from numb to, because I was on opiates and benzos for 31 years before I finally found a doctor that understood the nature of chronic pain and could detox me and
Oh, okay. Because I thought when you had mentioned that doctor that that was somebody early in your journey. That was later.
oh no, I did a lot of hunting.
How
And
in the world were you able to function for 31 years under the influence of those drugs? They're so horrific.
I had a lot of grace. I had a lot of help in my family, my husband
Yeah.
and my son. Um, I had,
Wow.
the people I had an army of people around me. I had all nurses and doctors and, all kinds of, let's say physical therapists, occupational therapists, all kinds of people that helped me. People who came in and, clean my house and stuff like that. Um, I had teachers, and I had a meditation practice, which I
Mm,
feel was I've been meditating since the mid '70s, and I really feel that even though I had, this habit of just being tense all the time, I was able to stay present and um, not judge the pain quite as badly as all the time. It was kind
yeah,
of like, I'm here, and just accept that you're here. Don't try
right.
and fight it, kind of thing.
Mm,
I still had a lot to learn from Dr. Prescott, who detoxed me and took me through his program.
yeah,
I had a lot to learn from him about the mindset and stuff, and what
sure.
chronic pain does to the brain, and how you have to all the things you have to do to heal the changes that happen in the brain because of chronic pain. And I still do that
Yeah.
because the that habit, the brain uh, gets in a habit of this is how we do life,
Mm,
and it's a neural network in there. It gets built. The more you reference that neural network, the faster it goes, and the more quickly it quickly it fires. So it's your default. It becomes
yeah.
your so wow, that has a lot of momentum.
Mm,
So in order to it's like a physics problem, an object in motion stays in motion. That's a lot of motion there, momentum, until
yeah,
acted by an equal or opposite force. So you have to bring an equal or opposite force to that habit in order to change it, build a new network. And so my long-term recovery is one day at a time, I'm rebuilding that network.
Yeah. So how has your life changed from from maybe the highest low of your, does that make sense? The
Yeah.
lowest point of the chronic pain to the choice to be on a healing journey to where you are now. What's changed?
Yeah, I was kinda always on a healing journey. I There was a part of me that always like, there's a way through this. I
Mm,
just, so it was always there. It just didn't have a super loud voice sometimes. So
sure.
my low was like, going to bed because of the last 15 years of the opiates was fentanyl. So
Mm,
I would go to bed at night, and people were dying just because they were getting an overdose. They were just taking too much of it, and
sh-
we didn't know. We didn't.
Right.
Nobody. It was kind of unknown back then. It's
Yeah.
probably still unknown to an extent. Uh,
Mm,
so I would go. I remember going to bed at night and going, I don't care if I wake up. So
mhm,
I went from there to, um, nobody's gonna stop me.
mhm. Yeah.
I went right, so I went right, and so now, I mean, I kind of you can see the difference in the personality, but that's an extreme, and so now what I'm trying to do is just kind of, can we just balance things out?
How's that going? How you feeling about how you doing
Better,
with that? Is it good?
better,
Yeah?
better. Yeah, it gets better every day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And now I know that you have a full practice of offering these modalities, as I mentioned earlier, to other people on their healing journey. Tell me a little bit about what one or two of those modalities that have been most uh, uh, not useful, but have had the biggest impact on you.
Great question. Really learning how to use breath consciously,
Mm,
to calm the nervous system, or to direct the nervous system in the direction you want to
yeah,
change it was amazing. Like, wow, I have control over this. I can actually change my state depending on, what I'm doing with my breath. I was
isn't that
like,
crazy? I remember feeling the same
kidding?
way the first time I had a real breath work session, and I was floored.
It's just like,
Floored. It's
it's
crazy,
listening to me. Why are they not teaching this in kindergarten?
right? Yeah, I agree.
So, number one, learn how to leverage conscious breathing properly. Get in front of somebody who really knows what they're doing,
Yeah,
and and have them take you through 3 minutes of alternate nostril breathing, or left nostril breathing, or long deep breathing, something, and you'll go, aha.
yeah,
They know what they're talking about. Right?
indeed.
So the breath. Um, the
What
other
else?
one, in terms of chronic pain, is meditation, because it helps calm the mind, and
Mm,
the the issue with the changes that happen in the brain because of chronic pain are this very chaotic and negative mind.
mm,
You want to do so, you start with the nervous system,
yeah.
right? And meditation is part of that, but you kind of have to bring breath work at that level. You kind of need to bring breath in. You can't just do a stillness meditation. Well, you could, but it won't be as effective as doing like a breath conscious meditation, because the mind follows the breath.
Yep.
So if you have a calm breath, the mind will calm. And to a chronic pain sufferer, that's that's like manna from heaven, man.
Yeah.
So, also ancestral clearing was very helpful,
Tell
because
me a little bit about that. What is that?
yeah, that's called an energy medicine. It would be probably qualified as a energy medicine,
Mhm.
uh, but we don't diagnose or say we cure anything. We're actually bringing in. It's a prayer based practice,
Mm,
where we're actually, as a practitioner, I'm asking creator or consciousness or God or whatever you want to call it, to help on behalf of the client who also wants the work, is asking,
yeah.
to please help release that which no longer serves them.
Yeah.
And so if we're coming in to the planet with a lot of worry energy because
Mhm.
our grandmother and our great grandmother and on down the line worried
Mm,
about whether they were gonna be able to feed another mouth, or whether they were gonna be able to carry the baby to term, or
mhm.
etcetera, right? Um, Ancestral clearing helps us release that.
Yeah.
Yeah. just to shift that, and I
So
was
powerful.
astonished. I was astonished when I first experienced that work. I was just like, "What is this?" Like, can he repeat it, and can he measure it? And
That's right.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's really so, so powerful. When I learned some with somebody that I was working with similarly as the client,
"Mm,
that, there was this mixed message for me growing up of go, 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 watch your back. Like, because I
yes,
was
I
always a
get it."
goer. I was always like, I went to New York City for the first time when I was 14 years old. And I went by myself with an 18-year-old in 1976. You don't send a 14-year-old to New York City on her own for a month.
I agree.
But it was like, here, you have this great opportunity as a dancer child. Go do that. Watch your back. And and really nobody checked on me. Now, I wasn't deep into my addiction until I went back when I was 16. I moved there when I was 18. But that messaging from my parents, right? Of here you go, watch your back, but we're not going to check because we're busy with our own stuff, family, addictions, whatever.
Holy cow, that's
And,
good.
I
Good,
ended up
good.
in very unsafe situations, very, very unsafe situations,
Oh, man.
which I grew up to believe meant that I couldn't really fully be me because it wasn't safe to be me.
Yeah, that's quite a trifecta you've got going there.
Right? And I fucking didn't learn that until I was 50 something. Like, it didn't stop me from going and doing things. I've built multi-million dollar businesses. I've traveled the world. I've done a lot of really cool things. And since I learned that and deconstructed that whole messaging, now there's a freedom and a lightness to the choices where
Mm,
I no longer feel the need to explain them, justify them, qualify them, take
mm,
on anyone else's fears around them.
mhm.
Any of it, people, because people are gonna be people, and people are gonna project on us whatever they wanna project on us, and I don't have to be the screen. So, that generational
Mhm,
understanding, and to be honest with you, Elizabeth, I had gone through tons of therapy, thousands of AA meetings,
mhm,
uh, to discuss things that had happened in my life. And AA is not, they're not supposed to be therapists anyway. So it wasn't like I was looking for, therapy there, but I had been through a lot of therapy to look at, what was your relationship with your mother and your father and all that. But nobody that did the kind of work that you're talking about on generational messaging and how it shows up today and
yep.
how to break that down and let it. I just really felt like I was taking old cookies and crumbling their asses up and brushing them off the table, and off we go. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
wonderful. So
And
what
you can imagine how important that is to someone who's sitting in detoxing in a chronic pain management program.
Mhm,
There were 20 people in the room with me in that program.
mm,
I walked in with 40 years of chronic pain, and I walked out 52 days later with no pain, and he never promised that.
wow.
He just said
That's
he could help me reset my stress response, and I was like,
that's
"I'm
so
down, I'm
yeah,
coming."
I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. Here's
So
everything I own.
so
What
that
do you
was
want me to
this combination of being seen and heard
Yeah,
on a level of nervous system, belonging, being able to clear the lineage because I met John Newton, who this is his practice. He developed this.
yeah,
He was he was a wellness practitioner in that pain management program for
mhm,
as long as it lasted, and it's not there anymore. But
yeah,
I met him there, and I was so impressed. And I had my sci believe me, I had my science hat on. I was looking and observing and,
sure,
like,
sure.
mirroring and, like, I was doing all the things and and checking all the boxes and I was very impressed. So I took the first training, the first practitioner training I could, out of treatment. It was about
That's
6 months later,
amazing.
practitioner. Yeah, it's that
So,
powerful.
what would you say is the most, I don't know if exciting is the word, or you can use exciting, like, what do you love most about your life today?
Oh, wow. Um, I just have access to a joie de vivre
Mm,
that I remember having as a child, and I reclaimed that. It's
yeah.
just and I don't it doesn't matter how what's happening with my day particularly. I have the tools now to, um kind of meet life on life's terms, and I'm not saying I don't get affected by things. I do. I'm a fully functioning human being here with all the
Sure.
emotions. Um, but being able to access that joy is something that I'm so grateful to reclaim that.
That's wonderful. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being with me today and sharing your story about saying yes to healing. I'll make sure that we have all of the contact points, listeners and viewers, for Miss Elizabeth down in our show notes. Any parting words for any of our listeners or viewers that might be suffering with chronic pain?
Well, I would say the greatest healer in your life is within you.
Mm,
So you need to keep that reference and ask for help because there are people out there that will help you, right? You're not in
excellent.
this box, in this cage by yourself. There are people that can help. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jennifer.